Hi everyone, so to start this tutorial video off, I thought I'd give a brief summary of the UK article. So basically, the Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council was declared not fit for purpose by Louise Casey, who carried out an inspection of the council after Professor Alexis J. published an independent inquiry into child sexual exploitation in Rotherham in 2014. Louise Casey found that within the council there was bullying, sexism, suppression, poor leadership, and poor management. She found that the council was in denial, they failed to address their weaknesses, and they covered up information. In particular, the council failed in its duties to protect vulnerable children and young people from harm. There was a lack of support for victims, and there was also a lack of action against the perpetrators. 1,400 children had been sexually exploited in Rotherham from 1997 to 2003, but the council did not acknowledge this because they are more concerned with their own reputation than protecting its most vulnerable and in-need citizens. Instead of getting its priorities in check, Rotherham Council did not use this inspection to learn and improve moving forward.
The Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies, the voice of child welfare in Ontario. Children's Aid works alongside their partners on elements such as policy and protocols, training, and informative research. Through these partnerships and formal protocols, effective collaboration results in children and families receiving the right supports from the right people at the right time in order to achieve a commonly shared goal of child safety, well-being, and permanence. Children's Aid Societies have a vested interest in creating wellness outside our sphere of influence. This includes advocating for supports for their community partners who play a large role in keeping the children and families in their community safe and supported. In 2006, a series of strategies were developed in 3 key service delivery areas. Based on these strategies, the Child Welfare Secretariat identified key priorities aimed at improving outcome and interactions with children and families involved with child welfare agencies across the province. These include a more flexible intake and assessment model, a strategy to reduce court delays and encourage alternatives to court, a broader range of placement options to support more permanent homes for children, and a streamlined and rationalized accountability framework. I'd like to expand on a broader range of placement options to support more permanent homes for children. If good permanency-focused planning provides children and youth with emotional and legal stability, and the range of family-based care options has expanded, preventing admission and working with families to enable children to remain at home is always first and foremost. When this is not possible, however, placing children with extended family members known as kinship resources, or in the case of placing Aboriginal children with their cultural community, known as customary care, are the preferred options. For children with different needs and limited family options, traditional foster care and adoption with varied levels of openness between the birth and adoptive families are also available. And some of the child welfare facts and figures, in Ontario there are 47 designated children's aid societies. 9 children's aid societies are Aboriginal agencies and 3 are religious. 2 are Catholic and 1 is Jewish. In the fiscal year of 2014 and 15, there were over 8,600 full-time equivalent staff in children's aid societies across Ontario. However, they do not mention how many are actual caseworkers. Without this number, it's hard to determine how many cases each worker took on during that fiscal year. The highest number of referrals in order were from law enforcement, schools, other children's aid societies, and from the mother, father, or child, and community caregiver professionals. The top 5 reasons for children and families becoming involved with children's aid in order are requesting for assistance, child exposure to partner violence, caregiver with a problem, physical force and/or maltreatment, and inadequate supervision. More than 171,600 calls and referrals were made, 80,813 of which required investigations. Of the investigations that were completed, 77% did not require further protection. Youth aged 16 to 18 are the highest represented group in care. Children's Aid Society also has campaigns such as Speak Up for the Kids campaign and Go Purple campaign, and they have Abuse Prevention Month, which is October. However, all of these are the adults advocating for the children. We have not seen anywhere on the site where they actually talk about the child having their own voice.
First of all, I want you all to know that I'm very uncomfortable speaking on camera, so please don't judge me. When Children's Aid Society needs to intervene in a child's life, we want them to support the child and not to take away from what needs to be said or even heard when there are circumstances that could prevent children from receiving the help that they need. Unfortunately, there is a very large number of cases that are reported annually. Some may be trivial, but some, on the other hand, can be a matter of life or death, but we never know until a caseworker becomes involved. On December 16th, 2014, Jim Rankin of the Toronto Star wrote an article on the lack of funding for the 46 Children's Aid Society branches throughout Ontario. There are many times where smaller societies need to cover a bigger geographic area, such as London and Middlesex. These societies are facing crunches, according to Mary Ballantyne, Executive Director of the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies. The Ontario Child Protection budget is only $1.46 billion. That is not enough when it comes to the safety of children and youth in our province. Brant Family and Children's Services chose to shut down their office 3 to 5 days a week rather than laying off valuable employees that are needed so badly to handle these cases. The Ministry of Children and Youth Services had the means to step in and act if the funding placed any child at risk. This made me think, does this allow the child a sense of agency because they may do what they feel is best for the child and not allow them to be heard, exerting power and control? Or will they listen to what the child wants? For example, placing more children with families is less costly than foster care or group homes, which are least beneficial to children. Barbara Kay of the National Post wrote the article Problems with Children's Aid Societies on February 27, 2013. And it wasn't just in terms of budget constraints. Children's Aid Society has more power than any government agency. Staff members may not be registered social workers, which many are not, and can enter a home without a warrant in some circumstances, apprehend a child with no due process, interview a child with no advocate present, ask police to enforce apprehensions against their own judgment, which is not listening to what the child says, medicate children over the wishes of their parents, punish the parents lastly. There have been children removed from homes for less serious issues, for example, poor homeschooling. Kevin Lieben, a clinical psychologist with decades of experience advocating for children, stated, "I would love to just demolish the system and start from scratch again." Some general reasons why are because they use it according to diverse subjective impulses. Next, which is a very big one for this class specifically, is children have little voice. CAS lawyers claim to be protecting privacy rights. Children in foster care typically do not have access to a children's lawyer. Confidentiality protects the powerful and not the vulnerable. As I close, Lily Tomlin mentioned a quote that spoke to me about allowing children to have the chance to be heard while we step back and listen. I always wondered why somebody doesn't do something about that. Then I realized I was somebody.
So Children's Aid Society's primary motive is to defend and protect children from abuse or potential abuse. But this motive, unfortunately, comes at a heavy cost. Oftentimes, children are taken out of their homes and away from their families with little to no say from the children. There are circumstances where the children are given the opportunity to be put into a separate room with a caseworker, and they are asked questions, oftentimes questions that can be highly stressful and sometimes a little bit manipulative, especially for children of a younger age. CAS caseworkers are not 100% to be blamed. Unfortunately, there are regulations caseworkers are forced to abide by, and these regulations and policies oftentimes are influenced by traditional views, and not necessarily the views that we are currently studying. The views that their views are more for advocating for and not advocating with. And these are very huge implications for children because they're traumatic experiences. They're experiences that can cause great damage to children at a very young age. But like I said, CAS workers are always to be blamed. They work from a top-down level, and oftentimes they are overworked, they are underfunded, or they are understaffed. But these implications cause great damage to children. Oftentimes children are kept in the system, never to see their families again, with little opportunity for rehabilitation on the family's side, and it is all at a great cost.
So the first case study is about Jeffrey Baldwin, who was age 5 when he died from starvation and neglect while under the care of his grandparents. His grandparents were convicted of second-degree murder in 2006 and sentenced to life in prison with no parole for 22 and 20 years. The little boy and his sister were confined to an unheated bedroom for 14 hours a day, breathing in the stench of their own urine and feces. The Toronto boy and his sister were placed in the care of their grandparents by the Catholic Children's Aid Society, despite the fact that the grandparents had a history of child abuse. Another case study was about a 7-year-old girl named Caitlin Sampson, who was fatally abused by her guardians in 2008. The CAS authorities realized they had files on the couple only after the child was found dead. Donna Irving had 2 children who became wards of the Crown, while Warren Johnson had been accused of sexually abusing his nieces, and the information got lost. The information about the couple got lost in the transfer from CAS to its sister agencies. So the poor organization of the Children's Aid Society caused the boy's life and caused the girl's life. If they had looked into the boy's grandparents more, or they had looked into this couple's history, the little girl and the little boy would both still be alive.